All right, welcome back, everybody, to the podcast with Jason Christoff. And we're going to jump right into Jason. How the heck did you get to be where you are? How did you avoid the corporate wage slavery job and overcome your own mind control to be able to teach us?
Oh, I had the same mind control everybody else did. I did have one advantage. I grew up around repetitive content. I grew up around all business people. So I was always a business person through the repetitive content. And when you're undoing the mind control and getting yourself out of it, you keep what's good and you get rid of the negative. So what was good was the business mind control that I was under. I'm very good at business. But my not only were my family business people, they were raging alcoholics. So they were self-sabotage experts. So they would make $1 million and drink it away and get a company and then drink it down to nothing. And they were really good at building up wealth and then destroying it because they didn't really believe they deserved it. They had a lot of negative programming as well. And of course, group pressure, the smallest group is the wealthy, abundant group. So when you get into it, it's very scary because you're not in the majority anymore. You're in the minority. So you got to be pretty strong to stay in the minority and still feel like you're strong and that you're not going to be attacked. So for me, I had to keep the business repetitive content, which I did. So I'm still a businessman today. As soon as I graduated McGill University in Quebec, Canada, I definitely started my first business, but I had all the other programming of my family as well. The self-abuse Olympics is what we would call it. The drinking, the drugs, the cocaine, the steroids, and I just hated myself, and I didn't know where these programs were coming from. I treated myself like I wanted to die. I was tired of living, but I wanted to live at the same time. That's when you knew the mind control has got you, because everything's going in the opposite direction. You want to be rich, but you spend your money. You want to be healthy, but you're doing a bag of cocaine. So you know there's some mind control hacking going on. So I basically took a longer road to get rid of my mind control, what's called mimetic programming. I had some very destructive, self-abusive, unloving programs in my neurological system. And I took a long time to get rid of them. And then I found out all this information by being a student of Paul Chek and the Chek Institute in California. And then I started to use these mind control tactics, because there's only one set of tactics to mind control someone. You can mind control them to be a human mess, or you can mind control them to be a human success. They're the same. You just got to control the repetitive content. So I started doing this with my health clients, because I was a health coach at one time, and their only thing that worked. It was the only time they showed up at the gym, the only time they quit their addictions, the only time they ate the diet that I would give them. And I said, oh, this is really good. So I started doing it online. I got so busy, I actually had to start a school. So now I have a psychological reprogramming institute where I teach medical doctors, chiropractors, health coaches, and members of the general public how to use brainwashing, mind control, and psychological manipulation to change their lives for the better, and then to go out and do the same for their patients or their clients. And now, with my knowledge on mind control and brainwashing, I've been asked to speak basically all over the world, explaining these complex issues in simple language. And my next stop is we're going to the US Senate in 3 weeks to speak with Senator Ron Johnson in the JFK building. And so we're going to give testimony as to the mind control that was used on the public during the COVID PSYOP.
Wow, that's
Just
amazing.
Holy shit.
I
Yeah,
wish
it's good
everyone was
stuff.
so receptive to that. It's like trying to get people to believe. It's really hard to get people to believe they've been tricked once they've been tricked, because they don't want to believe that they were that dumb, that they fell for all of this and lined up to harm themselves. They want to believe that they did the right thing and they were protecting people, and the world has their best interests at heart. So I think trying to convince people sometimes is the hardest part. But once you can get them just to pick their head up, the barriers start to crumble, and then it's like, how do you rebuild? And the word magic thing, I know you've studied some of the meanings of words, and it's one of those areas that people don't even think about. And I just picked up on two words that you mentioned in the earlier part of the podcast. You said most people go to school and they're told they need to have an occupation. And when I hear occupation, I think occupy. And it's like, who's occupying your mind? Or when you say you have to have an occupation, it means you're signing up to have your mind occupied by some sort of army that doesn't have your best interest in mind. And it's almost like these large corporations and the powers that be are renting your brain function, your mind, your creativity. They're renting that from you by occupying it and then extracting it from you, just like extracting the honey from the hive. So I just thought that whole word occupation. And as we talked about the Saturn cube, the black cube, I was like, you know what? The company that I work for invented the office cubicle, and everyone calls it the cube. And it's like, I have to go work in a cube. And it's just, it brings up that whole, like,
Shit.
I'm part of an occupation. I'm working in a cube. And
And
like,
well, and
the
what does the
whole-
army do? It occupies, right?
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
They
Whoa.
occupy a land.
So trippy.
I mean, if the more you look into it, we're not going to go into this podcast, but it's like, we, quote unquote, citizens of the United States, are enemy combatants under the law passed in 1913 and reinvigorated in 1933 that classified United States citizens, not American citizens, but United States citizens as enemies of the state. And that's why we need to get approval from the state to do things that are illegal. Getting married is illegal. Going fishing is illegal. So you need a license to do them given to you by the state that you have to beg and ask for and get approved. So I just thought
Uh,
this wordplay is just, it's so
yeah,
amazing when you get into it.
absolutely. Like license, I say that's making sense of the lie, right? It's right there in front of us.
Mm,
And
nice.
even the word work. Well, if you look at the word work, if you were to just have the first phonetic WOR, how would you pronounce that?
War.
War. And the phonetic K, or the letter K, is the 11th letter of the alphabet. And in 11 in the Egyptology means death. So work is like, yeah,
You're making a dying, not making a
yeah, a
living.
war, right? Or it's a war. It's a war to the death. Or they're going to say you're going to earn a living. Well, an urn is a vase that carries the ashes of the dead,
Mm.
right? And they say good morning. What about a mourning? A mourning is what you do at a funeral. I mean, all these things are, or they call them, a tie, or they call it a title, right?
Mm.
Who are you tied to? Tell me who you're tied to. A title. And you're wearing a noose around your neck the whole time, which means someone else is pulling your strings, is going to pull on that noose if you misbehave. People really aren't thinking about some of these, or a collar shirt, like a shock collar, a dog collar. So you're wearing a noose around your neck as a tie, the tie towel. Tell me who you're tied to, a collar shirt. It's yeah, there's a lot of word magic going on here. Like
Is
you
some
have a
of
dog
that
collar on.
is some of that, Jason, tied into the work you do in the self-sabotage course? And the self-sabotage course, I just want to talk about it for a minute. So is it a certification that you obtain by going through the course that you've got?
Yeah, I certify semesters of students as basically certified overcoming self-sabotage coaches, but they're really certified psychological reprogram experts where they have their own we have a custom questionnaire. If you were to fill it out, I could tell you're programming a mile away, and I'm going to tell you why you're doing what you're doing, explain it to you in a way that you can understand, and then we're going to do the reprogramming options. And the reprogramming is just upregulating the positive repetition and turning down the negative. Because you know, you can turn up like hypnotherapy that tells you to be a loving human being. But if you go home and watch Bad Moms 1 and Bad Moms 2, you're going to level the playing field on your subconscious mind pathway. Your subconscious won't know which way to go unless you really upregulate the content in the direction of your dreams. Very simple reprogramming modalities for sure.
Do you follow Jeff Berwick at all? The
I follow Jeff.
Yeah.
I follow Jeff for sure. Yeah. Sometimes I'll listen to him. I used to listen to him a lot more in the past.
Yeah, he's so funny.
He is kind of funny.
Yeah. I know he's got a kid and we always like make fun of him because he's got like his video thing on the kids like in the sand, like eating sand or falling off something. And he's like, oh, well, that's okay.
Yeah, he's got the hands-off approach. He's got, you know,
Yeah.
if you let kids make
It's great.
mistakes and
Yeah.
get into a little bit of pain, it helps their brain develop. If you wrap the kid in bubble wrap, it can really go wrong in regards to psychological maturation of the child.
Absolutely. I raised my kids like that and they're all entrepreneurs and make the world a better place. I'm really proud of the time I spent with them. I spent 7 years home with them.
Good.
And I'm just like, I mean, it was a sacrifice, you know, like it was not easy. And I can see like so many other kids, I can spot them a mile away, like helicopter parents. And, you know, like I really let them just figure shit out and fail. And they, they show it even when you have a conversation with them, you know, like they can actually talk to people. It's really cool. So,
Yeah, my parents let me, you know,
yeah.
they didn't look out for me whatsoever. So it really
Right.
helped.
Well, I
I'm
think,
lucky I'm alive, but I'm
yeah,
alive and it really helped.
I think our generation had that, right? And we look around at the generations right now and it's like, I mean, people are just scared to have their kid walk down the block. Like you can't even do that anymore, right? Like you'll get
Right.
CPS on your ass or something. I don't know.
I
I
remember
digress.
I remember playing in the woods with my younger brother before we moved to the city. And we moved to the city when I was 7. So I was playing in the woods at 4 years old with my 2-year-old brother, no parents, like way out in the woods. And that's just how things were. And we learned how to figure it out. And also, I mean, Jason, does that? So I'm thinking of your childhood too, and you had to overcome your own programming. And somehow you overcame like alcohol and drugs and like straightened yourself into the area that you wanted to move. So like, do you think some of our programming that we had as kids that we were given a little more freedom was something that helped you break free and that it's harder to do today?
It is because in psychology, in order for a child to actually mature in what's called individuate, which means recognize that you're not part, you don't have to be part of the group. So, in order to grow in that direction, you have to experience pain and failure. And the people who rule us know this. This is why they took thumbs down off many video sites. Everybody gets a participation ribbon. If you fail school, you graduate anyway. This is why they need the safe spaces, but they're doing this on purpose. If you don't feel your pain, that's another reason the alcohol and the coffee and the sugar, Canada, marijuana is legal coast to coast, because you need pain to become an adult.
Mm.
So what you do is you create a society where no one gets to feel their pain. So you have 30 and 40-year-olds today still living in the basement of their mom's house, whacking off, playing video games all the time because they're not adults. And of course, a society like that is very easy to bully, coerce, govern, lie to, manipulate, and steal from because you don't have any real adults. You have they're of adult age, but they didn't experience the pain and failure that you need to psychologically mature or individuate. And again, is this a chance happening? Not by a long shot. Is it a misunderstanding of the science? No, it's a weaponization of the known psychology. It's a weaponization of the known science against the slave class. Is make sure to wrap them in bubble wrap, give them sedative substances where they never feel their pain, because pain matures a person and makes them an adult. Very simple psychological manipulation.
I wanted to, so we use like some terms like slave class, and honestly, like the more I started thinking about this, and early for me, like late 90s, when I got into this crazy corporation that was spying on me and stealing my laptop if I didn't physically lock it down. I started having these like awakenings, and I thought, in the past, if you housed a slave in whatever country, you had to feed and clothe and house them, and that was on your dime. And so now what we've created is like we allow, quote unquote, allow the general population to work at any job they want and make just enough money to pay for their own food and housing and their transportation. And then the rest goes in taxes. It's taken away in taxes to support these regimes. So it's almost like I call it the corporate wage slavery, because you come into work and they tell you where to sit and what you're going to work on and when you're going to have it done and what time you have to be at work and what time you're allowed to leave and when you can take your lunch break. And if you work in a factory, like a lot of people do, there's even a buzzer that tells you when you can take a break and when you must come back. And this, so I think what people think is like, oh, we don't have slavery anymore. Well, slavery was only outlawed in many countries, like not that many decades ago, not hundreds of years ago, but just decades ago. And we have a new form that's more insidious because the people under the system don't even recognize that they're in the system.
Yeah, it's the same profit, right? It's even more profit because you don't have to pay. I mean, even in the old slave plantations, if a woman got pregnant, one of the slaves, you're the one that has to conduct the birth. You're the one that has to endure the loss of productivity with the female being out. She's got to be with the baby, and it takes a long time to get the baby into the slave position where they can work in the field. So you're losing a lot of money, and now we incur all those losses ourselves, and the slave master just he's whistling all the way to the bank. It's the same thing. It didn't start out like that in Canada. There were no taxes up until 1916, zero. We had a parliament building, we had roads, we had a post office, and we had an army. Now, who was paying for all that if there's no taxes? The owners. So people don't understand there's owners of these areas, there's owners of these countries. It's the same owner today. The same group owns the US, owns Canada, owns China. I mean, in China, the UK royals took over China in the late 1700s with what? Drugs.
Heroin.
The same way, yeah, with opium. It's the same way they take over certain states in the US right now. Look at Philadelphia. Look at Kensington Street. The whole place is colonized. It was infiltrated with drugs. Look at the marijuana in Canada. In Canada right now, in British Columbia, it's legal. Any drug is legal. There's actually food trucks, drug trucks. So food trucks converted to drug trucks. They sell fentanyl, heroin, and cocaine out of it. It's legal as long as it's under 2.5 grams.
Wow.
And it's the same group all the time, bringing in the drugs, taking over nations, and then still pretending they're separate nations.
Mm-hmm.
That there's big advantages in pretending that these different slave farms are different countries. We don't even have to get into that. People might not even be able to wrap their head around that because of the box they live in, that these aren't countries. These are different colonies, bee colonies run by the same human bee farmer.
It gets more and more obvious the more you dig into it that it has to be that way, even if you couldn't find the evidence, which is clear as well. And it just blows people's mind to even think about that. And I mean, we usually try to start like, where do you start? The Federal Reserve is not federal. It's private and it's owned by the same group of families that are running all these things. And you hear some names that people know, and those are not the true people doing everything. Those are the pool boys, essentially, where the names of people really running these things are behind the scenes. And we have a friend who's a colonel in the army, and they use these armies, and the people within them are even more brainwashed to think like we're fighting the enemy and we have to do these things, and it's all just manipulation of keeping people locked in to the place where they are and in this mind control that you talk about, which is why I think it's so brilliant, the whole like psychological deprogramming and reprogramming that you're doing in your course. Like everybody needs to go through that.
I want to go through it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you just want to be the best mom or the best guitar player or the best entrepreneur or the healthiest person or run the fastest race. You got to unclutter and defragment the mind control that's being put in
Mhm.
that makes you dull your shine and strive for mediocrity and trim your own tall poppy when you start getting successful, because I've done that too.
Mm.
And there's nothing wrong with anybody. We're all, when a cut heals, there's nothing wrong with us. When we respond to repetitive content for safety purposes, there's nothing wrong with us. What is wrong is when there's a group of people orchestrating negative repetitive content on purpose, calling it movies and TV shows, so that we keep running east looking for a sunset. That's a problem. And if
Mhm.
people can't, if someone has a shitty life right now and they don't like their life, you're going to have to basically learn about the lies that you're living out as truth. The more lies you live, the more pain you're going to have. So if you have a lot of pain, you got a whole Santa bag of lies you got over your shoulder that you're going to have to unwrap and deal with one at a time. And it could be as simple as just starting with your health. Coffee is not healthy for you. Alcohol is not healthy for you in moderation. These are lies. This is how they colonize your mind before they colonize your body and your finances.
Mhm. I have actually two questions for you. So one is, do you ever receive death threats?
Me, no.
No.
I've never received one death threat. And I'm quick to sort of lash out at people. I'm not your typical mainstream truther. If someone wants to fight me, they know where they are. And I did fight a lot as a kid. I'm not
Mm.
adverse to fist fights and knockout and drag out bloody brawls. So I have no problem with people threatening me. I don't, I'm from St. John's, Newfoundland. If anybody knows anything about that place of the world, basically, I don't give a shit.
That's awesome. And then my second question is, Jason, like, do you think this message, like your message, right? People that are maybe our generation are perking up to it and it's becoming more, I wouldn't say mainstream, but just, people are talking about it and mind control and blah, blah. But what about the kids? Like, what's the future? Like, how do we reach more children and what's the future of, like, what are you seeing?
Well, alternate systems, there's a lot of alternate systems becoming
Mhm.
parallel to the ugly, dark, and rotting system that they're trying to drive us into. Because, of course, we have to walk in ourselves. We have to inject poison into ourselves. We got to stick the poisonous stuff in our own mouths. We got to watch TV ourselves. They have to trick us to participate into voluntarily. So all these alternate systems, especially for the children, there's a lot of, you said, fun schooling, unschooling, and parents en masse are withdrawing their kids from the school system.
Yeah.
So basically, there could be parallel systems where there's highly intelligent, capable, independent, entrepreneurial kids outside the system, and basically, open mouth breathing, drooling zombies somewhere else. And these alternate systems are like alternate realities. They're going to exist side by side. Anybody with their kid in the school system right now is basically sending their kid to school, and the kids will be conditioned over time to believe in these fake narratives like climate change and reverse racism and all these other uh, propaganda agendas, to the point where the kids might even be the terminators for their own parents 20 years down the road and say, look, mom and dad, with the climate and you're white, I'm just here to euthanize you. This is the best we can do. Don't put up a fight. This is what parents who don't understand what's going on might have to be facing. This is what the school system is designed to turn the kids into: self-gratifying, perpetual infants that believe the liarrhea of their basically ancient pharaonic governments. And they're not trying to save the earth.
Yeah.
They are trying to get rid of people, but they're not trying to get rid of people to save the earth.
Right.
Trying to get rid of people to steal their stuff.
Right.
Because if there's two parents over here on my left and they take they take themselves out through mind control. They inject poison into themselves. They both have heart attacks or strokes. Their assets go to their kid. Now, if their kid sterilizes themselves through the trans agenda, cuts their own breasts off, cuts their own penis off, or takes sterilizing hormones, and they can't have children, or they're not even interested in procreating because it's just too much fun down at the fun factory cities, well, then when that child dies, all the assets go to the state. And this is how this group operates. They operate on multi-generational timelines, and they teach the slaves to only think about themselves in fun hour to hour. And this group has a totally different dynamic. They think about, like, George Bush Sr. knew what was going on, and he knew he was never going to see this day. He died, what, 3-4 years ago? George Bush Jr. is going to die before 2050. These guys commit to generational criminal fraud, and they're looking for the massive cash in say 40 years, where all the assets of our generation are passed to kids that aren't going to have any kids. And under the law, and they wrote the law specifically for this, when that kid dies, the assets go to the state. That's their haul. This is their $1 trillion criminal organization. And then they just start the bee farm over again, tell another set of lies through the government school system, put people in boxes, and just keep repeating the cycle every 70 years. It looks like it's every 70 years they do this. I know you're probably shitting your pants at home, but wake up. There's not a lot of time. I'm really sorry that I'm delivering. I'm not even sorry. I'm just happy you're hearing it. If you're electroshocked, there's a lot more depressing information on my Christoff report if you'd like to participate.
Exactly. So you know where to find Jason, and this information, you have to go down the rabbit hole of darkness to get to Wonderland. Like you can't avoid some pain, psychological and otherwise, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I think a lot of the work you're doing, Jason, of like, okay, here's all the craziness going on and here's the depressing news, but the really good news is here's the tools to reprogram yourself. And the more people we do this with, the more of us there are, and we can come find each other out there and create these parallel systems. So we love the work that you're doing. It is absolutely critically important right now. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Just one more message. Don't even worry about what that mentally defective, clinically insane group is doing. Build your own strength. Build those 5 pillars of strength. Only focus on that. Because if you're in a campsite and you're getting chased by a bear, you don't have to run faster than the bear. You only have to run faster than the person next to you. And then you're safe. So just make sure to keep that in mind when you're dealing with all this insane information. Yes, I collect it, and yes, I try to scare people into action. But if you just want to leave all that depressing information behind, work on your physical strength first, then work on your financial strength so that you have options. Freedom is options. Money is freedom. Money is options. Work on your intellectual strength, your emotional strength. Your emotional strength is when they come knocking and the werewolf is out, can you stay calm and keep a level head? Right? And then spiritual strength. Do you know why you're here? Are you really here to drink lobotomizing caffeine, work a job you don't like, go home and drink poisonous alcohol, gain weight, go to a man or a woman who wears a white butcher coat, asking them for more poison to put in your mouth along with the poison you're putting in, and then sit down with the person you call a partner, holding hands, leg to leg, and watch actors shoot and stab each other? If you need spiritual strength, I will tell you that is not why you're here. You're here to be a guardian of whatever this place is, a guardian of the children, a guardian of the disabled, a guardian of the seniors. and you're here to protect the female as a male. That's my job on the planet. Protect females and protect weaker humans around me from this encroaching evil. That's the only reason we're here. We're not here to pay taxes. We're
Mhm.
not here to work jobs we hate. And we're not here to go on vacations for a week where we just change the location and where we get drunk and high. This
Right.
is the dumbest idea, some of the dumbest ideas that can pop out of a human skull. So just understand, build these five pillars of strength. And again, if you need more depressing info, you know where to find me.
Awesome. I like how you were describing that. I had a naturopath about 20 years tell me this information, and she said men are here to protect the innocents. And I love that, right? Like it kind of encapsulates all those things. And it's like she's like, it's nature, it's children, it's women, it's everything that's innocent and this pure in this world. And I was like, oh, I really love that. So your message
Mhm.
really, you know, like it really hits in the heart space, Jason. And thank you. Like, oh, I'm gonna get all teary. But thank you so much for being here and sharing this and having the courage to speak out against this and shed light. Like, I don't feel like your information is that dark when you're shining the flashlight on this dark stuff, right? So thank you very much.
Thank you
You're
so
very
much.
welcome. Happy to help. And if anybody needs to reach out, just info@jchristoff.com. If you're ever crazy enough to have me back, I'd be more than happy to travel back.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn the